medical affairs is certainly the rising star in pharma. A lot of many movements and things have been done in the last 2 years with the ongoing transformation process. And I can't be more happy to welcome two extraordinary minds when it comes to AI and medical affairs. First of all, ladies first, we have Michelle Bridenbaker from Idorsia. Hi, Michelle. Always glad to see you. How are you?
Hi, Dario. Doing really well. As you can see, it's nice and sunny here in Zurich, so no complaints.
Great, fantastic. And we have Yaiha Anwar, an expert from Okra. Same question to you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to be here and speaking with you.
Fantastic. So the audience certainly is very curious to hear, does AI make sense in medical affairs? And let's deep dive into the conversation and start with the first question, which is, what's the opportunity for data and AI in medical? Maybe we can first speak from the technology side. So Yaiha, if you don't mind, please answer on this particular interesting question.
Sure. So the opportunity is huge, right? So we, in medical, like any other branches of pharma, there's a big history of collecting data, right? So we have been at just simply capturing information through various engagements that the organizations have, either inbound or outbound. But what can you do with all that information? So generally speaking, pharma is very good at collecting the data, but the value proposition is the area where is pure, for a large part, is manual. It's not scalable. And I think we are at a point in time where we see a big shift in digital transformation, and the technology has matured enough in order to provide those new avenues to explore what is the art of possible and how can we leverage technology in order to have a much better view on what is happening around the world across different channels, and have a view on how those then evolve over time in order to empower people to do the thinking part, the action part that comes after.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot. Michelle?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really been nice to see the evolution of technology and AI in the medical affairs space, from simply understanding our data and data analytics to, I think it's becoming more sophisticated. I think about now we're approaching the way we are doing clinical trials a bit differently. We're looking at how we are interacting with the customers differently. We're giving them a better experience, 24/7, 365 possibility. I think as well, what's really, for me, quite compelling, and it's kind of the newer space with technology, is we're able to firstly enable ourselves to be more effective and to be able to be more present with the customers, but also to actually create the content and really understand what they need. I think in the last session, they did a nice job talking about the fact that you have to understand, like, you don't need technology necessarily to do a good job if you're creating good content and you have the right intention. But I think where technology now is being leveraged really well is for us to understand what is actually needed, what is resonating, and where customers are going as well. If you have really good technology in place and you're really looking at that data, you're able to, really make much better decisions and actually get the information people need. So for me, I think the enabling capabilities have substantially increased with technology internally, but especially externally. And I think that for me has been the biggest change and the most important impact.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Next question. What challenges do we see and how far are we from AI technology enabled medical affairs? Maybe we can start again with you, Yaiha.
Yes. So there are the organization are usually, generally speaking, they are not particularly built. The processes that are out there are not built to enable technology, right? So the data is not collected in such a way to basically inform the AI to find patterns in the data. So there is a kind of a disconnect in terms of what the AI would like to do and wants to look at the data and how the information is captured and stored and actioned upon. So one good example of it is, for example, if you are an MSL and you go on in the field and you are tasked to engage with a KOL or healthcare practitioner, and you then provide the transcript of that engagement into the CRM system, and then what happens to that? So why do you put that information into the CRM system, and what are the paths to informing the local or global strategy that triggers action, and then the outcomes are captured? So that's feedback loop, and the way that the information from a single engagement leads into a action is not very well defined, and it's not very well tracked in many organizations, which is kind of limits what the technology can offer today. Having said that, on the flip side, something that is perhaps quite burdensome and difficult for humans to process in terms of how do you find patterns and process unstructured data can actually be quite much more feasible and scalable when you have a technology that can enable that, in order to not only close that loop in a way that as an MSO, you actually can see and feel what your engagement and the intelligence that you collect can drive actions internally, and you can then take learnings from that in order to inform what your next best engagement would look like when you're going out in the field again. So it is a little bit of a interesting dilemma. How would you approach it? Where would you start? But I think, like any other challenges that anyone would face in life, it is by doing. So not waiting for perfect circumstances and perfect scenarios that all stars align. It is a learning process that you start by adopting AI, adopting new technologies in order to guide you on what good potentially can look like and what would the next steps that you would take.
Thank you very much. Michelle, same question for you.
Yeah, I think to build on that, I think the biggest issue we have is knowing what to do with all this technology. I think there's a lot of focus on AI, and it's always a buzzword, but people don't really understand, when you're doing things like unstructured data analysis, you need to have a question. Like, you have to understand why you're out there looking at the information. You have to have some inkling of what you're hoping to somehow glean from what's out there. I think as well, when you go to things like sentiment analysis, you also have to have an understanding of somewhat what you're looking at, and what you really you have to understand the area that you're analyzing quite significantly. And I think then you create, really good ontologies and different, buckets to look at this data. But, there's so many different, technicalities to it that people don't understand. So when someone like ourselves come to leadership that maybe are not so used to this technology, I think the challenge that we often face is helping them understand, like, AI is not the panacea of everything. It's you have to actually invest a lot of time in it. And I think Patrick touched on this well. Like, you have to really be all in on the concept. You have to be able to sell this vision to the leadership, and you have to really think about what you want to achieve and why you're going to do this. I think there's so many projects that are kicked off without that really important question, like, why are we doing this and what's it going to entail? And then I think as you implement these programs, it's really important to take this, kind of crawl, walk, run approach, excuse me, a crawl, walk, run approach, because in that situation, you really can realistically begin showing the benefits of what you're doing. You have bite-sized ways of, pulling the data together and showing the success, and then giving yourself a roadmap as well to continuously improve. So for me, those are, in my opinion, the biggest challenges that we typically face in this space.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Next question: what should be considered when onboarding new technology in medical affairs? Let's start with you, Michelle, this time.
For me, I think I've already kind of touched on why are we doing this? But I think we also have to understand that you have to also, there's a front end experience for people that are using whatever you put together from a technology perspective. And you have to also build a very clever back end, system. So if you're going to say digitize or use technology or AI for your channel support, or for even supporting traditional channels, you also have to think about how are you going to connect this behind? How are you going to enable this? Can you also, in the case of my company, we're very small. So how can we be efficient as well in what we do? Can we use different bits of content in different places? We also have to think about the fact that we need to change the content depending on where it goes. So I think the really big thing that I think always gets forgotten about a bit is the back end, because there is a lot that goes into that really allows you to be excellent in what you do. And I think really thinking about the interconnectedness, because then again, you can start to really make your organization, especially medical affairs, more connected, but also have greater ability to amplify the information that they have and to have more powerful, actionable information. I think the other thing is too, is that you have to have a long-term plan. I think people think when you implement it, it's one and done. You just put it in, it's done, you walk away, it's finished. But it's a continuum. And as I said, you start out with, I think reasonably, most people will start out with something that's very palatable and then bite-sized and then continue to grow. So I think those are really, for me, the things that if you're going to go down this path, you really have to make sure that you're thinking about the long term as well. Because once you implement it, you're not done. You're just beginning a long journey.
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Michelle. Yaiha?
Yes, so I think one thing that is quite important is that what is this technology meant for, right? So it's not about having an intelligent system that tells you what to do. It's more about human machine intelligence, that combination, that sweet spot of someone with 20 years of experience in medical space being empowered and enabled by technology to do their job better, to bring that expertise to the forefront of what they do on a day-to-day, right? And to that end, then the technology and definition of what you actually do within that, it becomes quite important, right? Because as you know, we very casually use the word AI and machine learning and NLP and whatever these terminologies that are out there. But what do we actually mean by that? Are we just simply coming up with set number of rules and then we just code those rules and then environment changes and then all those rules are go out the window? Or are we actually building technologies that can self-learn, can follow patterns in the data and inform at the right, in a timely manner, what are the insights that are coming in and what are the actions that are called to? And that is the difference between how you would then onboard a new technology that can last and can really get integrated into the organization. The other aspects to this is the process itself. If the technology is just a side kick, which is a sort of not really embedded into your process, it will never really truly live up to the expectations because it is a extra work someone has to do. So it's not really embedded into how we actually make decisions, how do we inform our strategy, whether it's from global or local or whatever that may be. And that goes beyond medical in many cases, right? So you may have MSOs that have gone into the field where you've launched your product, for example, in the United States, and there are a lot of learnings that has come through that. So that can be an asset where it would inform what the strategy would be for the next country that will go through the launch in order not to make the same mistakes. And that closing those loops, providing that complete cycle of feedback going through the organization is quite integral. What I would say though is, if, like I said earlier, if you would aim for waiting for all those stars align, you will never do it. It will never happen because there are a lot of learnings that come after you actually give it a go. You start looking at your CRM data. There are a lot of assumptions on what data we have, and you only know when you actually use it. And we have had many examples of that in the past where just bringing that data out of the silos, linking them, and just looking at them has opened up the better understanding of where we are as an organization. Are we truly capturing insights, or are we only reporting on our transactional side of activities of I talked to this person and I had a nice coffee with that person? That's not the type of information you want to be put in the CRM system, but you wouldn't know if you don't use it. And that it would be the step one in order to educate the MSLs that are in the field how to best capture the information, how that then escalates up the ladder into the organization and fed back in again to the MSLs for the next engagement.
Thanks a lot.
Can I add interesting, because I think he really raised a good point, because sometimes you have these happy accidents with these projects. And we put in a program actually in my organization, because we're so small, we were like, we need some support with monitoring the phone calls, for example, in our call centers. And what we did, we wanted to just do quality monitoring. And we decided to use actually AI-driven sort of sentiment analysis to help us a bit to understand more what was going on, mostly to understand were our call center agents doing a good job, for example. And what we walked away with, which was like, again, the happy accident, was we were really getting actually a very clear verbal confirmation of the frustration that patients were feeling with insomnia and with the therapies that they had. And we were getting to understand better, even like the vernacular that they use, like what are they actually talking about? What is the frustrations they have? And we also were able to learn, even with our own services, if they had other interactions with our business, they were having challenges with, for example, getting access to drug. And these are things that, we didn't intend when we went into this for this to happen, but it's what resulted.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Last question. Let's imagine that you're at the very beginning of implementing AI in medical affairs, right? Where to start? What advice would you give to a complete rookie when it comes to AI, and from which starting point should that person start to achieve this rise of the AI in the medical field? So Yaha, maybe we can start with you, since I believe that you receive that question on a daily basis, right?
Well, like I say, I think you need to know what you want to get out of it. So really, what question are you trying to answer with this technology? And focus on that, and really trust people with the right level of expertise in their own specific, specialty to then deliver to that, right? So if you are thinking about a particular organization, like I just give you an example, right? Depending on, we have worked on in this space with a number of pharmaceutical companies, and a simple question like, what's the definition of an insight? You get very different answers depending on whether someone is sitting in a global office, or someone is sitting in a particular market, or someone's in a different therapeutic area. So just aligning on what is the ask, what do we want to get, it should be the starting point on that business value proposition. And when that is set, then the journey starts, and the journey starts with data. So we need to get the data piece right. We need to understand that as the data comes in, the ones that we collect ourselves as an organization, of course, we have full control over in terms of education and training that is required to make sure the quality is there, and we improve on, and we keep that education and training as a constant ongoing element of our day-to-day. And then the technology then sits on top of that and can then take it to the next level.
Thanks a lot. Michelle?
Yeah, I think for me, it's certainly, there's kind of three major things that I've learned, because I've put in a completely new infrastructure this year in my own organization in medical affairs. And I think the first thing is, a lot of people had ideas, and again, everyone wants to use AI, and they had a lot of ideas, but we had to keep asking the question, why would we do this? And why are we going to take on this project? And the reason you have to do that is because, again, our resources are not unlimited. And I think that comes to the second point, which is be prepared for the fact that it takes a lot of resource. I mean, everyone thinks, again, it's technology and it's going to make things easier. But when you're implementing this, it's quite a lot of work. If you're even setting up translational AI, you have to spend a lot of time setting up glossaries, getting the countries ready for that, preparing the business for even using this to be able to support them. Whether you're using a chatbot and trying to help people understand what's the value of this. And again, you have to build glossaries for this. It really doesn't matter what it is. There's a lot of work that goes into actually building out this technology and making it so it's meaningful and purposeful for the customer, and also understanding their perspective. And I think the third thing for me that is the biggest lesson is that there are a lot of people that don't really understand this space. And you have to spend a lot of time with leadership often educating them on what you're doing, again, reiterating the why, and just communicating the victories. Even if you fail, it's okay. Like we had something that failed, and it was so meaningful to the business to say, oh, we're going to kill this. Like, it's just not working. This doesn't make sense. We killed it quickly, but we learned from it and then iterated from it. And I think that communication and that continuous education to the wider business is also really, really important, because it helps them to really see the vision, and to stay on board with the project. So those are, I'd say, my 3 top learnings from this year, especially.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. We received an interesting question, which is to both of you. Thanks for the interesting discussion. Aside of analytical part, do you see challenges in capturing some types of digital conversations? Example, one-on-one communication via messengers between the med reps and doctors, or any other similar challenges? Who would like to reply to says forward?
I think from our side, I mean, it's kind of a similar challenge you have with the chat bot too, or chat enabled capabilities. But when you're having one-on-one conversations, it really depends on how you set the systems up. So again, it depends on the nature of your compliance organization. They may really say, we have to have this fully recorded, this, you have to consent from the person to have it recorded, and you're somehow really analyzing that data very carefully. And I think when you do, we actually, again, with the sentiment analysis we're doing, for example, in the call center, that's one-on-one communication in a phone call scenario. That is, again, we use voice recognition and AI for that as well. And when you're doing this, again, you have to understand that you have to build in the mechanisms to be able to monitor that and make the compliance organization comfortable with what you're doing. So it involves things like, how do we identify when things like adverse events are going to come up, or what are the terms, or what are the things that are going to flag for us, any compliance? I think those are the big things that can learn, at least internally. I think that on the customer side, during channels,
Michelle,
we do a lot up front to make sure they're aware of the fact. Oh, can you still hear me?
Yes, now it's better. Okay. Yahya?
Yes. So for me, I think we need to realize that the way that we capture information information or content can come from various data sources, right? The mechanism in which that content is provided to you is almost not so important than what you do with it and how the technology is dealing with that. I think you Michelle, just touched upon a number of points where, understanding what this content is related to. So the detecting of, for example, themes within a conversation, whether it's safety related, efficacy related, whatever that may be, the sentiment perhaps, predicting that sentiment, but not only detecting those, not only identifying patterns in the data, but also to be able to explain why and explain what, right? So those are more important in order to really truly provide the value of that conversation one-on-one, and what does that mean in terms of the share of voice and learnings from the past. So connecting the dots here is much more important than what you do with one data point, right, in the entire system. And one thing that I wanted to say, just for completeness, none of these platforms, if you're thinking of AI enabled technology that you would then acquire and use on a day-to-day as an off-the-shelf offering, that's probably not the really good way of going about it. It is a ever evolving concept, right? These technologies cannot freeze in time. They need to adapt to the ever-changing data dynamics of how you would integrate data, whether you are truly only using the content captured by MSOs, or do you want to use the call notes? Do you want to use social media? How do those all come together, and various data assets? So those, in terms of the value proposition for every organization is more of a important element to realizing the value that you're after.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Michelle and Yahya. It was a really great discussion. Now we are proceeding to a 15-minute break, and after that we are returning back to the next normal. So again, 15 minutes and returning back. Once again, thanks a lot, and hopefully hearing you very soon to the next one.
Thank you all.
Thank you.